Am I really relevant? Hold on just a second. Hello, radio, hello. Just want to be sure my loading control is right. First of all, it was relatively easy, but again, my background is such, and I have a higher IQ than average, so my experiences would not be everyone's. But, so don't think that I'm typical, because I'm not. However, the grade, I assume what you want to know is what the grades were, and the VEX did tell me. Where's my pen anyway? The VEX did tell me the grades. They didn't tell me which ones I got wrong, but I can tell you that when I was going through the exam, I would come to one that I was a little bit, well, I'd narrow it down to one, to either B or C or something like that. And it seems to me that I always guess wrong. You know, I can never guess right. Even when there's a 50% chance of getting it right, I get it wrong. But anyway, well, the grades were 97.1, 100% on the general, absolutely no errors at all, and 96 on element 4. So that was the total. And was it easy? Yeah, I mean, relatively easy. Yeah, I mean, it was relatively easy. But of course, I had found previously that I could wing the element 4 without even opening a book or studying anything, and I could get above a 74. I mean, I have known this for years, and I've said this on the air, that I could usually get, you know, in the 80s, 82, 85, that's without even, you know, that's winging it. But anyway, so those are my grades. The issue with the lies that were told about the FCC canceling my license, that's bullcrap, because they have no grounds for canceling it. I have no enforcement action against me. The only two letters I got were for hijinks and high misdemeanors on 7200, and that was over a period of 3 years. I mean, my God, give me a break. Now, when I canceled the license, there was a period of apparently where people on 7200 were trying to earn curry with Laura Smith, and I don't want to comment on Laura Smith right now. I mean, I could, but I have doubts about her. I have doubts about how she operates her business. But in any event, so you can cancel your license at any particular time. You can do it either through the internet, or you can send in a written request to get it served. I chose the written request myself because I thought this was, you know, a real occasion. I wanted validation that I'd done it, so I sent in a written request and sent in the only copy of the license that I had. That was a email license that I had on the, I guess I had it printed out. I guess I did. There was apparently in May no immediate response for a while, because this is what the FCC calls manual filing. Manual. In other words, the FCC really doesn't want to do that. They don't want to do a lot of paperwork. They would rather have you do it through the computer and have an adjudications person look at it. And I know that most federal filings today, legally, they can do that. And it saves a lot of time to have e-filings, definitely. So it's a pain in the neck to have anybody send in paper. First of all, the paper can get lost, but let's not go down that path. Anyway, so Smith had me on a bad boy list of where she wanted to, it was not hotline it, but, you know, keep things on pending. In other words, whatever I did on the ULS system, she wanted to know about. So what happened would be, whenever I would do anything, even if it would be a change of address, she would have to know about it. Now, this is ridiculous. There was nothing I ever did in radio that even would begin to warrant that kind of supervision, but that's her. All right. You got to deal with it. So it wasn't immediate that the license was canceled, right? It sort of sat there in a pending file until she got back from vacation, which was the Memorial Day weekend. So what am I to do? I'm sitting here going like, well, it says it's pending. I mean, how do you pen a license cancellation? I mean, what is there to pen here? So I continued to operate, and whoa, that was the wrong thing to do, because as soon as I came back on 7200, used my call sign, the little animals were all on the line. K1LEM is an illegal station. As if the people that operate on 7200 are all pristine. They all give their call signs. Well, you know the story. They're a bunch of hypocrites. They're a bunch of old washerwomen wearing smelly Depends. That's what they are. Okay, well, who would ever think that she would listen to that, right? Well, she did listen to that. Because I then didn't know what to do. I thought, well, you know, we can let this stand, but, and I'm not afraid of re-examination. You know, we can certainly do this. But maybe I should now file with the Secretary of the Commission for reconsideration, or what do they call it? They call it a pleading. Legal terms, it's called a pleading, P-L-E-A-D-I-N-G, which can get relatively complex and long. And if there's anything there, you know, you can't bring in extra information. I mean, if you plead something, you can't say, oh, well, you know, he had a license, but we just don't like this idiot, so now we're going to downgrade his pleading. You see, that's something that's indictable with the commission. You can get after the commission on that legally. I mean, I could get on their ass if I wanted to. You can't do that. You have to follow legal protocol. If there was an enforcement action pending, sure, but there was not. But anyway, that's a long story. So I get this letter from Smith. When did I get it? Last part of June. That I had been operating an illegal, unlicensed radio station for 2 days. Post the cancellation of the license, which was what, 28 May. Well, obviously that really caught me, because I had received no notification that my license had been canceled. And how could she believe that I have a computer right in front of me, and the minute something comes up on the FCC website, I'm going to go see it? I mean, not necessarily. You're going to have to, if you're going to cancel a license, I mean, I did cancel it manually. You would expect that they would send me a notification back through the mail, and they would send it certified mail. Well, they didn't. Well, eventually they did, but they didn't send it certified mail. So it didn't get here for, like, a week and a half, 2 weeks? I forget. Anyway, didn't get here till around the 13th of June or something. Well, already she's saying and accusing me of operating an unlicensed radio station. Now, how could she know that unless something on 7200 was feeding her the birds, little chirpy birds? I believed at that point that seriously, amateur radio was an extremely toxic hobby. I didn't want anything to do with it. Clearly, if she's going to operate like that, she's going to listen to, who knows who she's listening to? Seriously. She's not listening to the right people, that's for sure. And she may possibly have some kind of little burr under her saddle about me, but I used to work for the government, and you have to operate with adjudications of efficiency. So they don't like you personally, or they think you made a decision they didn't like. I mean, police officers do this all the time. Police officers make so do judges. They make unpopular decisions. You're not trying to win a popularity contest if you're in an enforcement branch of the government. So if your personality is so small that you think you always have to be approved of, but of course you're not going to be approved of. So there you go. So, I don't know, that was a long diatribe. KX4, new baby. Yeah. I had a little baby goat this morning. Yeah. Yeah, little baby goats. I love them. Yeah. So anyway, I hope that answered your question, KX4NB. I don't know. See, that's the big mystery, isn't it? And that's the one where if I got paranoid, I could make a mistake, and I could say, well, you know, she's got it out for me. She's got me dead center of her radar screen, or center of the bullseye. Because I did send her a letter where I took a not very attractive picture of her after she sent me that interference letter where it was 2 months late. I don't know if I told you about that, but this did get me a little bit concerned. I was not a constant presence on 7200 by any means at all. But I did get this certified from the FCC. When was it? Yeah, when was it, Mama? Oh, yeah. So I mean, I didn't think I was doing anything. What could I have been doing that could have triggered that? So I got out and opened it. And it's for alleged interference that happened way back in the first part of March. And here I am getting the warning letter way into May. I mean, what's that about? I mean, did they really have to deliberate that long to send a warning letter out, or is she got some kind of a vendetta? Because that prompted me to send a picture of Smith along with Dylan Roof because they look alike, and I sent her that copy as a CC. Now, do you suppose that was a nice thing to do? Could be operating like that. Now, let's go back and answer your other question, which is highly relevant. And I have actually not a clue. I don't have a clue to it. And you're not the first person to have commented how Cherry Beach continues to operate and run 7200 and blame everybody else. Now, everybody knows M2SUV deserves an NAL. Everybody knows that. Nobody's going to dispute that. So it's not a question of taking sides if you're just trying to find out what's going on in radio land. Of course he deserves an NAL, N2FUV. But at the same time, so does K9RSY richly deserve an NAL. And yet he's there every day jamming. I used to try to talk to Joe, and he'd come right on and say, well, you don't talk on this frequency until I allow you to talk. Well, if that's not jamming, what is it? I wasn't aware that anybody was assigned a frequency. You don't like somebody, you just can't come on and, open up. Yeah, all these things seem to fly, shall we say, under the FCC radar. And I'm mystified by it. I really am. Because it seems to me as if she, and I say she, but who knows who's really pulling the strings here. She's going after the low-hanging fruit. She's going after the K1LEM and, the low-hanging fruits. She went after Chrissy there, K4SSIJ and, the boy. And I mean, she doesn't go after the big stuff like FUV. He's still on the air as far as I know, unless he actually has had a visit from the federal marshals and they actually collected his radios, which could happen, I suppose. But just being so close to a holiday weekend, I mean, I doubt that it happened in the last 2 weeks. It was too close to Labor Day for that to happen. And the fact of the matter is, I doubt that it would ever happen anyway. But who knows? I'm not going to come in on that one, because I just don't know. I do know it seemed to me that I was collecting about every 13 or 14 months a letter of warning from Laura Smith for doing essentially nothing. I mean, I gave my call sign. I'm not intentionally interfering with anyone. And it seems ludicrous to me to go on 7200 and to claim that somebody's interfering with a legitimate ongoing QSO. I mean, it's ridiculous of all frequencies. Now, if you had a net frequency on 75 or somewhere else, and you had returned to that frequency to be annoying or be a pain in the neck, as W6WBJ has, sure. I mean, that's absolutely clearly a violation of Part 97. The fact that you are offended that they don't let you check into a net, well, yeah, I suppose you could be offended by that, but that does not mitigate the fact that you go back there and interfere with that frequency every single time that net tries to come up. So obviously you violated Part 97. So I don't know why Billy, he's a good smart guy, but I mean, he hasn't got a ghost of a chance. I mean, seriously, he's not going to get his license renewed. Do I think with the W6WBJ case that there will be another NAL? You know damn well there won't be. All the FCC really wants at this point from Billy is that he doesn't get his license renewed, and if they can just terminate that or dismiss the renewal application, then he's in an unlicensed status, and that means that, yeah, you can operate all you want as an unlicensed station, but you're opening yourself up for federal marshals to come with the FCC and grab all your equipment. And there's a legal name for that. He's not going to go to jail for it, and they certainly aren't going to put another forfeiture on his head because they know the DOJ already said they're not going to operate on the 25 grand one. So why would you put another one on the same guy? No, but the FCC can, with a bench order from a federal judge, if you're an unlicensed station, can actually go in with the federal marshals, and they do have to have the marshals there because the FCC is not a law enforcement organization in and of itself. It's a regulatory agency. It's not a law enforcement agency. So he could lose his SB 220 or whatever if he wants to operate without a license. Is he going to go to jail? No, of course he's not. Is it going to be embarrassing because the federal marshals are going to go out there and raid his house? Yeah, probably. But it seems to me that that's the only option he's got right now. But we'll see. I mean, I'm still sort of following the W6WBJ case because Billy's a smart guy. He's sort of a deviant, but he's a smart dude. He's got well above the IQ of the average. And all you have to do is listen to his interactions on 3840 to figure that out. Now, this is KX4NB for ID. Yesterday, I was so amused to find that even in my absence, with my transmitter totally off the air, and me listening on an SDR, that I'm being accused of causing all kinds of interference on 7200, and the swamp queen has me DF right down to my house. I wonder how that could be when I'm listening on an SDR, and KX4NB is back to his old bad tricks of interfering, which never really took place to any great extent on 7200 to begin with, to be truthful. Yeah, but I'm back to my old, my bloody old bad tricks again. Those red flags. Hey, let's put the old red flags up and fly the Jolly Roger, if you know what I mean. But anyway, did you want to know more from me? Because I know I'm an air personality here. KX4NB. Yeah, not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. And the issue, I guess, is that intelligent people in amateur radio, like you and I and a few others, we're very much in the minority. So when intelligent discourse comes up, either in QRZ, on the web, or whatever, it's always misinterpreted by the low IQ'd masses. So I don't know. I've sort of given up hope. But with regard to the Swamp Queen, this is one thing that I've observed. If Laura Smith is indeed, and we know she is, she has sent out numerous warnings to various people, including myself, for alleged, and I do say alleged, intentional interference on 7200. Why is it that obscene and indecent behavior that is so manifest, it's so clear? I mean, you don't go on frequency and talk about tampons and blood and strings hanging out of vagina and not, I mean, how does that pass as anything other than obscene and indecent behavior, even by the FCC's own definition of what is obscene? Because the FCC is more concerned today or at least I guess the public is. I don't know what the FCC is concerned with today. But they allegedly are more concerned about obscene behavior than vulgar behavior. Now, vulgar behavior, let's talk that for a second. Vulgar behavior might be an occasional dropping of the F-bomb in context. But somebody that sat on frequency and dropped the F-bombs as if they were punctuation marks, that would get the FCC's attention. But clearly, dropping the F word once in a while, but not frequently, or the MF word or some other word, one of the Carlin words maybe, that isn't going to get the FCC's attention, and it's clear why that isn't, because of federal, because of the Supreme Court decisions about, being very wishy-washy on definition. However, that said, that does not bring the swamp queen into any kind of good situation, because the FCC on its very own website defines the sexual kinds of things, the excretory kinds of behavior, all of these things that are considered. Now, I'm not using the word vulgar now, I'm talking about obscene. And that's clearly by the FCC own definition. So you have a catch-22 at the FCC. If they're not going to prosecute him or find an NAL for him for doing this, then they're going to have to either change the law or say that obscenity is exactly okay on the amateur radio bands. And we know it's not okay on the broadcast bands, right? We know that, right? I would think even vulgar behavior is probably going to get a raised eyebrow from the FCC on a radio station. I just got that feeling. There may not be an NAL coming out, but there certainly would be a letter of warning. On the other hand, obscene behavior, which clearly we know what that is, it can be legally defined, and people would say, well, the Supreme Court never said what it was. Yeah, but look, the FCC did say what it was. And they're the regulatory agency that's out there. Why don't you go up and go FCC, obscene and indecent behavior defined? There's a whole web page that comes right off the FCC's server, a whole web page where it details what obscene conduct is. Now, clearly, if that is just going to apply to the broadcasting industry and not the amateur radio operators, then maybe we should strike that clause or that parenthetical little piece from Part 97, right? If it's not going to be enforced, so what's going on there? So, he's been caught so many times drunk. He's been caught so many times doing obscene behavior. He's been caught so many times threatening people. And it's alleged that he was actually turned away from Huntsville because of the threats that he made over the air. If you were running a field day operation where you and your associates are liable legally for any kind of misconduct that goes on at an amateur radio field day or an amateur radio event, don't you realize that if somebody walked into your amateur radio, legally, I'm not a lawyer, I have taken paralegal courses, I can tell you this is true. If somebody were to walk on the field of an amateur radio hamvention and there was ample evidence that they admitted somebody who was admittedly out to shoot somebody, out to defame somebody, out to, and it wouldn't make any difference who it was. It could be two criminals that want to wring each other's throats. That's immaterial. That's not party to the legal thing we're looking at. We're looking at violence. We're looking at threats. We're looking at possible firearms being smuggled into an event. Concealed carry. I can think of all kinds of things. And if somebody alleges that they're going to do this or threatens to do this, that's as good as the fact that they are going to do it. Those threats, and if you go to my website, you'll see where I published N1UZI, use these threat to N2FUV, that N2UZV should start digging his grave. He should start digging his grave. That's what he should do with his money. Because according to UZI, he doesn't live that far from N2FUV. He knows where he is. and N2FUV should start digging his grave. No, that's not a threat. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know what threats are there, man. A KX4NB. Yeah, okay. We'll try to have a wonderful day. I am thinking of maybe driving up to Wireman today because I need something to do, something new and different, and picking up some antenna supplies. I mean, I never thought, you know, never say never in your whole life. Never say never because you just don't know. As long as you're still breathing, things you thought would never happen could happen, both good and bad. So I'm thinking of maybe driving up to Wireman today and getting some RG8X for this new antenna I'm planning, which is a very simple antenna, but it's not going to be a vertical. I'm going to try to funnel my RF up toward New England and up toward Chucky. But in the mornings, if the propagation is good, I'm sure you'll be able to hear me just fine, because we know you do want to do that, right? Well, I don't know. You see, just let me leave off with this. Let's say that there were 2 recordings or 3 recordings or whatever from 7200. Somebody got very annoyed, and they said, well, Laura Smith's never going to do anything here. So what is our recourse? Our recourse would seem to bring some political leverage or leverage. What is it, leverage or leverage? I don't know. Bring some political leverage into this issue and embarrass the FCC. All right. Now, they've got 2 recordings, and I'm just asking you, just think about this. Remember, politicians don't know the first thing about amateur radio. So if you said, well, K1LEM is clearly interfering with somebody that you can't hear. Huh? That's just a guy talking. Yeah? Well, that's an interference tape right there. Huh? That's just a guy talking. Huh? Okay, that's what the politician is going to do, right? They're not going to ask any more deep questions about who was on the frequency, what times did it take place. Okay, so that's a violation 97, right? Clearly it is. I mean, under the right circumstances, you're not allowed to impede ongoing amateur radio communications. You're not. It's clear. And you do it repeatedly, and even with some kind of hubris that you have the right to do it, you're in trouble. Look at W6WBJ. Anyway, so now let's play the Swamp Queen's recording about his genital organ being in somebody's mouth. And I won't use the word on the air, but there's a synonym for a rooster that he used. And I have that on my website. Now, this guy is still on the air. Laura Smith has done not one thing to him. She's been apprised many times about what he does. There have been many tapes. I'm sure I'm not the only person that has brought up K9RSY's obscenity. It actually is degrading amateur radio, and the FCC has an active law against it. There's no question that it's obscene. It's not a question of Supreme Court. You know, we have to be very careful here. No, by definition, it's obscene. By your own standards, it's obscene. So how could you possibly not do something about it? All right, well, if they're not going to do anything about it, what's the next course? I'd call up Lindsey Graham's office, right, and send them the tape and say, I don't understand why. I reported this to the FCC, and without trying to defame anybody at the FCC or make them look unprofessional, you know, don't criticize Laura Smith. Don't criticize anybody at the FCC. Do not do that. Because the moment you start doing that, then you look like you've got sour grapes. You look like you've got an agenda. So don't do that. Just send that tape of K9RSY and say, this has been going on for years. And then, at the same time, send the politician the website, the little takeoff from the FCC's website about what obscenity is, because it's there. It's right on the internet. Even a child can go and find this stuff. Now, what I'm saying to you is, who do you think it is that's going to get the politician's attention first? Is it going to be somebody that's obscene and indecent, or is it going to be a tape of somebody allegedly causing interference where the politician, not being a radio amateur, hasn't the vaguest idea of what interference is, and it's going to be even harder to ever prove that it was intentional. But I'll tell you something, man. They know what obscene and indecent is. Oh yes. Oh yes. They may not admit it, but they know what it is. And all you've got to do is play that tape and send that, and get that politician, not calling Laura Smith, but calling the FCC and saying they want an explanation of why this continues to go on. And remember, the politicians control the purse strings at the FCC. Enough said. So much for that. Well, let's see. You could go to Apple Bark Music and see what you get. Go out to Apple Bark Music. I'm sure you will see a collection of little vignettes, video vignettes that I've taken off 7200 to illustrate day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, how the threats go on, how the jamming goes on, how the very people that may, and here again, here's your dark area, here's your dark area. I don't know who's calling the FCC, but you know that Cherevish has a network of little dirty birds out there. I call them, you know, the crows that sit on the short bus, that may never actually give a call sign, like that character Thorn. Have you ever heard that guy give a call sign? I never have. And yet he always comes in to defend RSY. Thorn. What a character. Now, I don't understand how if you're not going to give a call sign, you're going to operate on an amateur radio band. How is that different than being a bootlegger? I mean, I just have a hard time understanding the difference. If you keep coming in and operating on a frequency day in, day out, you've got a license somewhere hidden in an FCC database somewhere. Who knows what it is or where it is. But you keep coming on an amateur radio frequency and you never ID. How is that different than being a bootlegger? Please explain that to me. I think the FCC has to explain that. How is that different than being just somebody that's totally unlicensed? And they do it day in, day out, and they know they do it. And RSY, because he's smart like a dirty bird. He's smart like a criminal. He has this psychopathic mind. I've seen psychopathic minds before. His IQ is probably at least average, and it might be above average. But you know he's a dirty bird. He comes on there and he believes that because he goes K9 RSY, that all of his conduct is perfectly legitimated because he gives us call sign. Sorry, that ain't the way it is, bud. Anyway, so much for that. I hope I've given you enough to keep you busy there, KX4NB.